Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week that includes Project Triangle Strategy, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, and Unsung Story.
Woo!
Ooh. Can't
get over it. Project Triangle Strategy. What are they thinking?
It's a first-person shooter, right?
Yeah, it might as well be. I don't know.
Project Triangle first-person shooter.
Well, that's the next one in their series of just the most improbable video game titles.
Phoenix Rising.
Project Phoenix Rising. Don't worry, guys. It's a working title. Definitely won't be in the final game.
Good times. So how's things, DJ? How's life? How's California? How you holding up?
Oh, California is great, as far as I know. I've only seen the inside of my apartment for the last 12 months now.
At least you got that part on lockdown. You can attest that part of California is okay.
Yeah. No, keeping a close eye on it. Pretty good.
Good.
It'd be nice if everybody, I'd invite everybody to come hang out because it's going so great in my apartment, but can't do that, so please don't come visit me.
Save it. Herd immunity is coming, DJ. Save it. We'll get there.
Oh, God. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
It's good.
I think that we agree that when herd immunity gets here, that is good. I just don't think the way we're achieving it is the best.
We're just sort of stumbling over ourselves in the general direction of that.
Yeah, could have had a better plan, but here we are.
Yeah. It's all right. It's good. It's progress.
It's progress. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
You know what I did this weekend in my apartment that was exciting?
No.
I watched the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Oh. Cool. How was that?
I can't remember. Did you see this? I've
never seen it. No.
No, I thought it was actually pretty good.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's not like, Best Picture 2020, but,
sure.
You have video game movie good, and then there's just the scale of quality for non-video game movies. I thought it was actually pretty good.
It's usually a good time. The comment is it's pretty good for a video game movie. Yeah.
Yes. This one was it's pretty good for a movie.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's a little, it's a little bit for kids, so it's a little silly.
Sure.
But I had a good time. There were a lot of good jokes in there. A lot of very nice Sega Easter eggs. I'm not even a huge Sega guy, but I was like, okay, that's good.
I see where you're going. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. I mean, it looks charming, and I do like Jim Carrey, kind of at his best, and sometimes
Jim Carrey is terrific. It's incredible. Great job.
And the guy that does the voice of Sonic, who
Ben Schwartz.
This is John Ralphio from Parks and Rec, right?
Yeah, it is. I was 5 minutes in, I was I need to look up who this is now, so I don't, I can sort of picture it in my head the rest of the movie. And I was like, oh man, it's John Ralphio. I wish he's not doing John Ralphio as Sonic, or Sonic as John Ralphio.
That would be amazing, though, yeah.
It would be. I would love to see that, the alternate voice track. But he does a pretty good job. I mean, he does a great job. I have to say, though, it would have been amazing to see this in a theater, because it opens up and there's a Sega studio logo, essentially, and what it is just a screen wall of a bunch of Sega games. So, it opens with Sonic the Hedgehog, and then off to the side there's Space Harrier and whatever. But then off in the corner, who else could it be but Kazuma Kiryu just talking to the camera? I'm like, oh man, there he is. It's real. So that would have been an experience, but it was still very exciting to see him on my tiny screen at home.
And for the listeners of the podcast who don't know who that is, DJ, who is Kazuma Kiryu?
Oh, that is our hero from the Yakuza games.
There you go. Not any Yakuza games I've played, but yeah, I know where you're going with that.
Right. Come on, you got to know Kiryu.
I know the name. Yeah, I've listened to 1 or 7 episodes of this podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. That's fun.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
It was we were in one of the apps. Man, I have like 40 apps for watching programs on TV now, and I can't keep any of them straight. But I was in one of them scrolling through kind of what's new, and it was like the Sonic the Hedgehog movie coming in 6 days. And I was like, maybe I would watch that. Maybe I would throw that on the television and occasionally glance my eyes in its direction. So based on this review, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Have you seen Detective Pikachu?
No, that's kind of next on my list.
Okay. It should be. That was very entertaining. I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah. I'm just going to, video game movies every weekend from now on.
Do it.
Do it. I'm not watching that Monster Hunter one, though. That's where I draw the line.
Did you draw the line on that? Have you seen the trailer for the new Mortal Kombat movie?
Yeah, it also looked not terrible. I mean, that feels like it would be more in the, still rating it in the video game movie spectrum. Right. I don't know if that crosses over towards being like an actual good movie.
I think some of the charm of the original collection of Mortal Kombat movies was their sort of low budget, goofy attempt at making a video game into an action movie. And I don't know if it would be nearly as charming with a giant budget and, people who actually know how to act and good special effects. So I'm a little concerned that the new movie will sort of be lacking in some of that kind of janky 90s charm.
I did get that kind of feeling from watching the new trailer. I was just like, oh, this maybe looks a little too serious or like too high budget or something.
Too polished.
Too polished, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that original Mortal Kombat movie is still great. I mean, I'll admit I watched it a few years ago, and I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
But at the time, in like 1996 or whenever that came out, I was like, well, this is better than the Street Fighter movie. It cleared that bar.
Right. There was not a lot of like points of comparison at that point, right?
Yeah. Although in a weird way, like, I haven't seen that Street Fighter movie in a while. I wouldn't be surprised if I actually enjoyed it much more than the Mortal Kombat movie at this point. Because that was, I mean, if you want to go for just like pure camp and corniness, I think the Street Fighter movie is where you want to be.
Yeah. And I think I have a new appreciation for Raul Julia as an adult than maybe I did in 1996. So,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, truly, we are, lesser as a species that he did not survive into the 2000s. But yeah, I don't know. I just was not in a position to be able to sort of really appreciate his sort of, I don't know, dedication to being that character at that time in my life. But now that I'm a little older and wiser and, have seen him in other movies and go, man, Raul Julia is the best part of everything he's in.
He's incredible in that movie.
Yeah. I just got to wonder if maybe I would enjoy Street Fighter more knowing that.
Yeah. Did you know he did that? He took that role because his kids were just huge Street Fighter fans. He had just he knew nothing about Street Fighter or anything, but he was like, I got to do this for my kids.
Excellent. No, that's great. I like him even more for it.
Yeah, that's terrific. It's like, brings a tear to my eye.
Awesome.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, good. That sounds like a weekend well spent.
Yeah. Or, like 90 minutes. That was also very appreciated. It wasn't like the 3-hour epic Sonic movie directed by Christopher Nolan or whoever.
Right. Yeah. Looking at your watch and as the second act is starting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, good.
Yeah. Pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So, current video games. What are you playing? Let's talk about something.
I think we gotta start with our favorite here, Project Triangle Strategy.
Yeah.
I can't get over it. I can't believe they put something out and they're like, let's call it Triangle Strategy. I mean, it's like barely a title. And I don't want to just fixate on this the entire time, but it really is just like, I can't stop staring at it on the outline.
I keep looking at it. Hey, surely that can't be right. Let me Google and make sure. Yeah.
Right.
It's definitely an odd choice. I mean, it's sort of an even.
It's like not even a choice, really. It's like the failure to choose.
Well, I mean, this is a thing, right? I mean, video games and movies go through a sort of a life cycle and generally start as kind of a concept, for a video game anyways, it could be years before that idea gets turned into a video game on a shelf that you could go buy.
Right.
It stands to reason that, whoever's creating these things doesn't necessarily know the name of the video game on the day that they sort of conceptualize it. That gets sort of agreed to later after many meetings and emails, I'm sure.
Right. I guess I should be grateful. It's not one of those cases where, like, clearly somebody just came up with a cool sounding title and then made the rest of the game or movie around it.
Yeah, I suppose we should be grateful for that.
But still, I'm just like, oh man, I hope they do something with it that is not Triangle Strategy. Kind of didn't do anything with Octopath Traveler, but we'll see where we end up a year from now or whenever this is coming out.
Well, because the life cycle of Octopath Traveler was similar, is that it got a very, very early demo, and it was called Project Octopath Traveler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were under the impression that, well, it's just a code name. It's just a nickname that they're kind of calling it around the house until they decide on what the real name is going to be, and then, the real name turned out to be Octopath Traveler.
Right, which is at least, it's a little farther along. It's not like Project Octagon role-playing game.
Right.
I mean, at least it's memorable. This one is, oh no, guys.
It's a little clunky.
Yeah, it's a little clunky. But enough enough just fretting over what they're going to call it. We have another 12 months to do that.
There is a playable demo here.
Yes. No, we didn't just muse over the title for the entire weekend.
Right.
I got through this entire demo, actually. It's not like the Bravely Default demo, which took me, I forget how long it was, almost 5 hours.
Ooh.
But it's longer than a typical demo. I think it took me maybe an hour or so to get through.
Really? It felt much longer.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, now I'm trying to think if I save my game afterward. It may have been because you can save midway through this. There are a few different segments that you go through.
Yeah.
And the last one that I remember seeing was 45 minutes or so.
Okay. I wasn't feeling it, so it just made me
You weren't feeling it
longer.
Okay, well,
than it actually was. Yeah. I don't know.
I can see that. Yeah, it does have a bit of a slow start.
Yeah, and I mean, you get zero context as well, and the demo sort of advises you of this. It tells you that this is a couple of chunks out of the mid game, and don't fret too much over things that don't make sense to you. But that said, though, it does try to give you a ton of background information very quickly. You do get a map with glowy bits that explains that these three countries are at war and yada yada, and finally bartered peace, and then there was a double cross, and now you're on the run, and then go video game. And it was still kind of a lot to absorb and to try to kind of contextualize.
It was a lot, yeah. I liked how it tells you just don't be worried if you're confused. You don't need to make sense out of all this. And then despite that, I was just really trying so hard to just make sense out of everything. It's who are all these people and what is going on?
Yeah. One of the things I did appreciate is that it has a fairly sort of sprawling cast, and when you interact with any member of the party that you sort of initially start in, which is probably 8 or 9 people, you can push a button and it will give you a little pop-up card that tells you who they are and what their role is.
That was so good.
I thought that was smart.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I wish every game would do this. I would do that multiple times in the same conversation. Who was this?
Yeah. Who are you again?
And
What's
then,
your job? Yeah.
2 lines of dialogue later, I'd be like, oh, who is this? Oh, it's that person again. I just have no attention span.
Yeah. It's sort of doubly smart because it's just, they're tiny little pixel characters. And while the pixel art is quite fetching, it is hard to sort of get kind of visual distinction between characters when they're just little blurry blobs of pixels. So to be able to kind of hold down X when you're talking to somebody, and it will bring up a beautiful painted portrait of them, and it'll tell you their first and last name and, what family they're a part of, and where they rank in the hierarchy of the royal family or whatever. But it was I'm like, oh, that's a plus. That should be in every video game, particularly every RPG where you've got 50 characters and they all have weird names for me to remember. Yeah,
man, real low key, just brilliant feature. I was very impressed.
I thought that was a plus.
Yeah, very good. Where to begin with the rest of this?
Yeah.
like you said, it kind of starts with a story segment. The whole plot seems very, very obviously inspired from like Final Fantasy Tactics, which had a lot of like political intrigue and warring families and double crosses and everything. I don't know why that just became the standard for these like tactical RPGs, but I don't know. I guess it's familiar territory to come back to.
I get sort of a Game of Thrones vibe, just particularly since it's, and I don't have kind of the Final Fantasy history, but just it's starting with sort of the big map and the glowy parts of like this country, and they're on the border of this one, and sort of all the, you know, interactions and battles between them. It sort of gave you the background on that, and I was like, oh, this feels like the kind of the opening crawl from an episode of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics is kind of unique in that it's basically a different team who made it. They like hadn't really done a Final Fantasy game before, and it was like not even really a proper Final Fantasy game because it was this tactics style one. Mm-hmm. But that team, that developer, this was sort of his style in previous games, and he kind of continued it into every other game that he made. So it's just like kind of this weird subset of Final Fantasy games and other RPGs that had definitely more of a Game of Thrones kind of political feel to it.
Oh.
But yeah, that's kind of how it opens up. And then it very quickly shuttles you off into doing one of these tactical battles, which should be familiar if you've played like Fantasy Tactics or XCOM or
like Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem to a degree. Yeah. I'm always like hesitant to group Fire Emblem with the rest of those games because it just feels different enough to me where I'm like, that's not the same game. But same general concept where you're moving characters around on a grid, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. In what way does it not feel the same to you?
Well, I mean, I should admit that I haven't played a Fire Emblem game outside of, I think, the demo for one of those, like Awakening, I think. But, I mean, this game feels much more directly inspired by Tactics to me, where it's like isometric and you have different levels of height on the play field. Did they have that in Fire Emblem? I'm not sure.
There are elements of that in Fire Emblem games, yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'm just completely off base. But
so the fog of war thing where you have corners of the map you can't quite see yet, and
See, that's not as much of a thing in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I
always thought it was like
standard.
I mean, it's definitely an XCOM thing. I've always thought it like a component of it, or an advantage of not having that was, you can kind of survey the entire battlefield and make your strategic choices with like all the information in front of you. But it's kind of just a tweak to how you approach these, I guess.
Right.
But so before you even actually start doing this battle, what was really surprising is that you get to walk around the map a little bit, which was funny to me because in the opening, you get the quick overview of all those cities who are at war or who were previously at war. And I was like, oh man, look at all these cool cities. I can't wait to walk around all these cities. And then I caught myself and realized like, oh, probably that is just going to boil down to placing 6 units on a grid somewhere and just having them walk around tiles. And I'm not going to be able to explore them like you would in a more traditional RPG.
Right.
But then right off the bat, they're just like, hey, walk around this bridge for a little bit. And the idea is you're doing reconnaissance for the battle you're about to fight. But I thought, well, this is cool. This is very different than something you usually do.
Well, it was it made a very sort of distinct point of saying that you're in exploration mode. And tap this button to end exploration mode and move on to the next thing. So, I thought it was sort of an interesting kind of directorial choice to allow you, some downtime, some time without sort of fear of triggering a battle or an encounter to, talk to people and sniff around. And there were a couple little hidden things that I found and pickups and stuff like that. And I was like, it's kind of sort of a unique approach to something that feels otherwise like a pretty traditional tactical RPG. Yeah.
So that was very fun. I mean, it was kind of a nice way to just get a preview of the terrain that you're going to be fighting on, because sometimes you don't even get that when you have to place units down.
Right.
And then the battles, I don't know what I was expecting, really. I played the demo of Octopath, and it was more or less kind of what I expected from an older Final Fantasy type of turn-based RPG. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting, I didn't think this was going to blow me away with just completely revolutionary changes. And for the most part, it kind of played how I'd expected. Mm-hmm. You did have a really good variety of like the different jobs on your team. which I guess was somewhat unexpected because on some level I just think, I'm going to have a team of guys and they're going to be like 3 knights and 3 identical mages and like an archer or something. But in this, it felt like each unit kind of had a unique job. There wasn't a lot of overlap between all of them. They all had kind of their specialty, which is very different.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that didn't occur to me while playing it, but now that you say it, I suppose that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it in some cases it boiled down to like, okay, you have a fire and an ice mage, and those are different jobs. But I found a lot of the time I was just like, oh man, I can't wait for one of my fighter characters, my damage dealers, for his turn to come up again. And there was just like one of those, so I really had to like improvise a little more than I was planning to.
No, I think the most games like this that I've played have been Fire Emblem games. So I think there are more roles in that. You don't end up with sort of those duplicates on the field. Yeah, and I think you're better served by having more variety in those games because you need to have. It has sort of the rock, paper, scissors where you need to be able to sort of counter whatever comes your way. So if the troops come on Pegasuses, is that a word? Pegasi?
Pegasi? I don't know.
I don't know either. Pegasus, they're generally you can't attack them unless you have archers. So you got to have somebody on your team who's a really good archer, and et cetera, et cetera. So if they come on horses, you need somebody with a staff to take them down, et cetera. So you do need to make sure you have a pretty even distribution of roles and weapon types on your team, and you don't end up. I don't think, if I remember correctly, it's been a little bit with too many duplicates.
Yeah. Maybe they just set up their team differently than I normally would, because I'll just gravitate towards whoever can do the most damage in a single melee hit and just put 5 of those on my team. Like, all right, that's sorted. So
I always want the healers.
I always want
people who can keep me alive. So yeah, if I'm going to duplicate anything, give me some magicians and healers so that they can scrape my ass off the ground when I get killed.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. I mean, you got to have at least one healer, or else you're just asking for trouble.
Right.
Another thing that did this kind of surprised me, though, is that it uses this TP system. Like every turn, you earn a point of TP. I don't remember what that stands for. If it was like tactical points or something like that.
That sounds right.
But basically, you spend this to execute attacks or abilities that are just anything other than your very basic moves. So like just doing a normal attack doesn't use any TP, but like if you want to cast a spell or do some kind of specialty attack, you have to expend this resource that you build up very gradually. And I thought that was actually very cool, because you're free to just use your regular attacks or anything, but in order to do anything beyond that, you kind of have to plan out and strategize a little bit more. And it doesn't come down to just using up like magic points. And I think, I didn't even realize this when I was playing, but I don't think it even has magic points, right? You just use this TP exclusively.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the currency for all of your special moves.
Yeah, so that, like, in retrospect, I was like, oh my god, I didn't even realize that, but it was working great, so cool. Good job, guys.
Yeah, I'll confess I got wiped out pretty early, and I wasn't super invested, so I bailed on this thing. I have so many games going that I wasn't gonna, do a second attempt to play the demo for a game that doesn't come out for a year. Just in terms of time efficiency, I'm like, I want to move on to some other thing. So, I also felt like I have a sense of this. I get it. I get what is it? I'm picking up what you're putting down. Project Triangle strategy. So I checked out in the middle of that first battle, so I didn't see the whole thing.
Oh man, I found myself really enjoying it.
Oh, good.
I really liked, in particular, there was like that spy unit, which is very fast, and she can act twice in one turn, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But one of her TP abilities is she can just cloak herself and become invisible. So I would have her sneak behind enemy lines, or maybe like position herself behind one of their archers and just reappear and stab him in the back a bunch of times. It's like, oh man, this is great. I can't really think of, I'm sure this type of unit exists in other games, but it's been a while since I maybe wouldn't have picked that unit, because it's a little more technical than what I'm usually seeking in my tactical units.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, no, that sounds like a very sort of unique contribution. I tend to gravitate in games like this to, a line of sizes. I want people in the front line who are just walls, who are just brawlers, broad-shouldered ass kickers, typically followed by archers, and then bringing up the rear are my healers and magicians, because they tend to be a little softer and a little easier to kill. I don't know. If I would have immediately have seen the utility in a spy character, but that does sound like a cool concession.
Yeah, no, that was super good. Man, so it's too bad you didn't make it past the first battle, though, because that they do some really surprising stuff in the second half of the demo. One of which is, so you finish that first battle, and you get shuffled off to, a few more story sequences. And there's this plot point in the demo. I hope this is not, spoiling anything, but I'm just going to explain what happens, because it's just a quick demo, where you have kind of taken... You're kind of like bodyguards for this prince who is on the run. And at one point, it comes down to, the enemy country who has invaded are demanding that you return the prince. You figure, they're just going to, execute him or whatever, so we don't want to do that. But if you don't hand him over, the enemy army is going to show up at your doorstep and trash the town where you're hiding out. So, there are cases to be made for both options. And what they end up doing is, I thought it was just going to be a matter of, you, the player, get to decide whether to hand him over or not. Because that's kind of similar to, other tactical games that I played. But what they end up doing is you have, a little vote amongst all your characters, and you get this screen where it's okay, here's everybody in your party, here's sort of what direction they're leaning in terms of, whether they should hand over the prince or not. And then you have another little exploration segment where you walk around the town where you're hiding out, and you talk to townspeople and just scout out the terrain. And the idea is you're kind of just collecting evidence or arguments that you can then bring back to your party who is just hanging out in this council chamber or whatever, and present it to them and try and make a case for one decision over the other based on which way they're already leaning. I was this is different.
Yeah.
And then you make your case, and then it all comes down to a vote. And it's just a matter of which direction gets more votes is what you end up doing.
And that is a result of your sort of politicking and networking prior to that, I assume.
Yeah, it felt a little like Mass Effect to me. Because if you go out and you'll one of the things you can do is you go out and discover, there's actually a network of traps laid around this town in the case that it ever gets invaded. So, this could be something we could tell people who are saying, we should hand over the prince so we avoid this big conflict, because we're obviously going to just get trampled immediately. And you go, we do have all these traps, though. So it kind of unlocks a different dialogue option when you're trying to convince those people.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was cool. That was definitely not something that I was expecting to happen in this game.
Cool.
And then the battle plays out based on sort of the decisions and kind of options that you've uncovered in your little research period.
Yeah, no, I'm a little grateful I didn't hang in there. It does sound like it goes in an interesting direction. Maybe I didn't get it. I was not picking up what it was putting down. That's certainly a unique direction.
The first battle, I don't know if I was super convinced by the end of the first battle that it was doing anything beyond just that cool TP system. It felt a little generic, not in an incredibly bland way, but just okay, yeah, it feels like a strategy game to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the little vote session that happened in between the first and second battles, I was this is maybe they're onto something here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah.
It feels very fully realized, at least this little slice of it, for a game that is supposedly still scheduled for next year, right? 2022.
Yeah, that's what they said during the little Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, so I'm curious how much of this could potentially change between now and then, because I was this feels like it could be the final game right here.
Well, that was one of the other sort of statements on behalf of the developers here, is that they were going to send out surveys to people who played the demo to provide sort of feedback, and they were going to kind of translate that feedback into kind of the future direction of the game. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting proposition that if this thing feels kind of fully assembled and fully realized, then how much tweaking are they going to do over the next year?
Yeah. I wonder if it's just like they rushed these specific chapters out so they could put them in this demo and then have to like assemble the rest of the game around it.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see, like, once this comes out, just compare it to how things went in the demo, just to figure out where all that feedback went.
Right. Cool. Well, interesting. I don't know. Not a lot of things get this much of a lead when it comes to sort of demos and stuff like that. So, I mean, the only kind of comparison I can think of recently is the way that Bravely Default 2 handled sort of multiple demos. One very early one and one closer to release. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a unique. I know demos take a lot of resources and a lot of kind of manpower to be able to sort of assemble and put out into the world. So to do multiples or to do them this far in advance, it's expensive. And I suspect that, I don't know, a lot of kind of work is going into making this thing the way that it is.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully they get the feedback they're looking for, because that seems like such a big component of having this out so early.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like they're in good shape.
Cool. Is it the same developers as Octopath Traveler, or is it just sort of share a publisher?
I think it is. And I was trying to look this up and was having a surprisingly difficult time actually finding like a list of names behind both of them. I mean, Octopath is much more documented than Triangle Strategy is at this point. But I ran across a few articles that seem to confirm that, yes, it is the same team, or at least the main names behind both games. Yeah, so that was something I was curious about as well. But they did feel very similar from what I played of each one. Cool.
Yeah, I've not played any of Octopath, but I do remember kind of the visuals of that being quite striking. So I was wondering if they came out of the same house.
I feel like they work a little better in this one than they did in Octopath. They have like this kind of they're like sprites on very kind of simple 3D backgrounds, but then they have like the depth of field slider or whatever just cranked up extremely high, so that like everything in the distance or everything like more than 5 or 10 feet away from you is just very blurry.
Yeah, it looks
I feel like they maybe toned it down a little bit for this one.
Yeah, that was my takeaway, because I watched the trailer for Octopath just this weekend after playing the demo to sort of compare and contrast. And yeah, Octopath has a very that thing where they sort of tweak the settings so everything looks like miniatures. Octopath really doubles down on that. And I didn't quite get the same impression from the visuals of Project Triangle Strategy.
Yeah. No, I was grateful that they maybe dialed it back a little bit. I thought it was a little intense in Octopath. But I think it looks great in this one, because you're like most of the time you're just rotating around this little like diorama. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool.
So it was pretty good. It was a surprise.
Yeah.
I also kind of decided to double up on my tactics games over the last week. I played Unsung Story, which is in early access. I don't know how much you've heard about this game. I think I briefly mentioned it a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Triangle Strategy, actually.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but this was basically a Kickstarter disaster that was initially advertised as from the mind of Yasumi Matsuno, who is the that guy who led Final Fantasy Tactics and all those other games.
Okay.
So it's a tactics RPG, kind of meant to be a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics. But the original developer behind the Kickstarter and supposedly producing the main game just basically turned out to be a bunch of grifters who did not do anything, or who just did very little. We'll never know how much work they actually put into this game. But a few years after the Kickstarter ended, this other studio, Little Orbit, I think, decided to pick it up, because basically it was just not happening under the other guys. So this is kind of extraordinary, actually. They just bought everything. I think that they like took care of all the assets and sort of design documents that the original group was working on. It sounded like the people at the new studio just believed in the concept so strongly that they wanted to see it through.
Oh, wow.
And since then, this happened a couple years ago. At this point, they have just been. It sounded like they just had to throw out 90% of all the work that was done because I don't know, they didn't think it was worth the time building on. But they've kind of taken the original design documents from Yasumi Matsuno and are just trying to get this game out the door. And they've been much more diligent about providing Kickstarter updates or backer updates, I guess, since taking over the project. And finally, in December, a couple months ago, they put out an early access copy on Steam.
And is Matsuno still involved in development?
Well, so this is interesting. I feel like his involvement was a little bit overblown from the beginning because it sounded like he was never intended to be just like involved day to day on this thing. He just kind of came up with the concept for the world and the story and a little bit of the game design. And it feels like since then they have just been using less and less of that, but still continuing to be like, oh, it's from the creator of Final Fantasy Tactics, to the point where in one of the most recent Kickstarter updates from Little Orbit, and I really appreciate just the amount of transparency that they're providing because it's so different from the first couple of years of this thing.
Yeah,
they revealed that it's at the point where Matsuno's really not closely involved at this point. He made some statement about he's not really comfortable in them using his name in the marketing in the same way that they have been up until this point.
Oh wow!
So they have, I guess, backed away from doing that. He still came up with some of the original concepts around it, but now it is just its own thing that they're building up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Man, 2014. I'm Googling this now. 2014 was the initial Kickstarter for this thing. So this is 7 years in the making.
Oh, yeah.
That's, wow. What a mess.
It is. This is like, I mean, this is one of the worst Kickstarter disasters that I have personally been involved in. Because obviously I'm a huge fan. Yasumi Matsuno, probably my favorite game developer. So I was just like, oh man, look at this. They've got the dream team. They've got this guy. They had as stretch rewards, I think, they had the original composer for Tactics and the artist. And I think they had a few of the localizers scheduled for stretch goals. And they just did not hit most of the stretch goals.
No.
So it really, after the campaign ended, and after this whole drama of the original developer just failing to do anything, really, it felt like it was getting farther and farther away from how I envisioned something that people were describing as a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics. To the point where I see screenshots coming out for it over the last few years, and it's like, oh man, it's just art-wise, it looks completely different than how I would expect. The composer is still in there. So it still sounds vaguely familiar, but it really does feel like it is so different than how I envisioned it. I don't really know what I'm expecting at this point. I'm just hoping that Little Orbit can put out a game that they are satisfied with and just rescue this from Kickstarter hell.
Yes, I mean, the simple fact that this exists as a playable thing in 2021 is probably nothing short of a video game miracle.
Yeah, no, it's very impressive just considering the history and everything that the team is taking on to get to this point.
So how was the demo? I think we're bearing the lead here a little bit. How was your experience with it been? Yeah.
I figured I should finally check it out, and I thought this would be appropriate since we're talking about triangle strategy to put it out there. It's not great. It's not in great shape, and I feel kind of I'm a little. Have a hard time saying that because I know what the team has had to put up with. And I know it's still in early access. I'm not sure how much. I think they talked about at least a year more just in early access before they're ready to put a final product label on this thing.
And do you, and maybe you can't sort of glean this from your experience with it, but do you feel like it's not great because it's so early, or it's not great because just the bones of it are not there?
I think, I think that's a lot of it. Is it may have just been I may have just gotten into it too early. I don't play a lot of games in early access just because I'll just wait for them to finish it up. I don't need to get in there and be chatting on the forums and all that. I'll just let them do their thing.
Sure.
But I was like, I was just too curious at this point. So I read the little write-up on Steam where they explained sort of what to expect from the early access version, and the way they made it sound, they said, maybe I was just misinterpreting this, but they said, you can play chapter 1 at this point, and most of, I think they used the term feature complete, which maybe that means something different than I expected. But it felt like, a lot of the game's systems and like the, just the general game mechanics are in there. It felt like I kind of expected like this to be chapter 1, like the final chapter 1, that will be in the eventual final game.
Right.
But what I played felt, oh man, it just felt like it has a ways to go.
Ooh.
It just did not play that great. It feels so generic at this point. And you can kind of see the bones from a Final Fantasy Tactics inspired project, but from an art direction perspective especially, it couldn't look farther from like how I imagine a Final Fantasy Tactics game to look. It's so weird because everything is like so shiny and polished. Like the graphics on a technical level look really good, but then all of the characters just have like the exact same face and a different haircut or like facial hairstyle on them, to the point where I would be in a cutscene and there would be these big talking heads having a conversation, and it would be like one character talking to the next character who would look virtually identical to the first character. I'm just like, what? How many people are talking to each other at this point? Is somebody just like having a conversation with themselves?
You need that little feature from Project Triangle. You hit the button, it tells you who they are.
I know. I was just like, who is this? Is this his brother or what's going on? I don't know.
And they're twins. Oh, wait, no, they're triplets.
Yeah. Just the combat didn't feel especially inspired. It's just very typical kind of like, move your character over here and attack this guy and then pick which direction they should be facing at the end of the turn. Like pretty standard stuff. Nothing especially mold breaking, except for one thing, which I'll get to in a second. So I was just like very underwhelmed. And I realize these guys they have an incredible task in front of them. So I wish them all the best. And that's sort of why I feel like maybe this wasn't in a great place for me to play this. Because I went back after finishing this just to try and like read through some of the more recent updates to like recalibrate my expectations. And it does sound like they've received a lot of feedback along the same lines, where they're like, the characters are a little generic, and they're trying to punch up the dialogue a little bit, because I also didn't think that was super good. And it sounds like they are going to be making significant changes to just how this section of the game felt. So I hope that works out well. I will probably give it another shot a few months from now, or maybe like a year from now, when they have had more time to put some polish on this thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it was tough, especially coming off of Triangle Strategy, which I was like, oh, this is surprisingly good. And just immediately jumping into this and going, oh, this could use some work.
This is surprisingly not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's got to be the danger of kind of being in quasi development on this game for as long as they have, and maybe feeling the pressure to sort of show the people invested in this thing that this is a real game and it's really happening, and
yeah,
here's what we've done so far. But you run the risk of putting out something that makes people even more angry.
Yeah.
Or even more disappointed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for me to just have any ill will towards these guys, because it sounds like they were such believers in it. I can't believe they would even take on something like this.
Yeah. I mean, it only exists because they saw the potential in it, obviously, at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. But so the one thing that I thought was potentially very cool is that it has this thing. It has the key system in the battle system is you're sitting down. It's called the Harmony Songbook system. So this is like the big unique sort of gameplay mechanic that's going to be in this game. And this is, I don't know how to introduce this. The name of the game is Unsung Story. And from that, I just kind of assumed that like Yasumi Matsuno's games tend to feature characters who are just sort of like these like unsung heroes in a greater conflict. You know, they're not the big name battlefield heroes who are like celebrated after the war or anything, but they're like the guys doing the real work behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
So I was like, okay, that sounds like a very Matsuno title. I kind of know what to expect. And then at one point, it was revealed that the mages, or whatever, like spellcasters, whoever in this game, in order to cast their spells, they like sing a song. So at that point, I thought, I can't tell if that was the original idea behind the name, or just something they added in because they're like, oh man, it's called Unsung Story. Does anybody sing in it at some point? I feel like they should. So we'll never know like what the real explanation behind that was. But anyway, so we've got the Harmony Songbook system, and basically what it boils down to is whenever you use a kind of a unique action, one of your characters like does something other than a basic attack, it puts a colored note on this little musical staff that is on the screen, like in the middle of the screen. Mm-hmm. And this is like when I realized what was going on, I thought this was just wild. Because if you complete a melody, which is 6 notes, if you complete a specific melody, you will get like a party-wide buff to all your characters. So if you do like a certain pattern of like these 3 color notes, you will get like an attack buff or a speed or defense buff. Like you can kind of imagine what potential effects that would give you.
Sure.
Which I was like, oh man, this is different. This is something. Yeah. It actually feels a lot like the hunting horn in Monster Hunter, which is probably the goofiest thing that you could pull out of that game. So I think potentially that adds a lot of like unexpected tactical depth. Because maybe you're trying to go for the specific pattern, which forces you to like not do a move you're going to do or use something just for the sake of filling out this melody. The only unfortunate thing is that in the amount of the version that I played, I just did not have enough abilities to form an entire 6-note melody. In fact, I don't even think I had. There are like red, green, and blue notes. I don't think I had anyone who had a blue ability, so I couldn't actually create a complete melody using any of the characters that I had. So
no,
that also felt a little just not fully realized.
Yeah.
I think there's like you could eventually do a lot of cool stuff with it, because essentially everything you do is potentially like building towards this potentially game-changing buff, hopefully. Right. So that feels like kind of just a weird thing, the trick that's up their sleeve for this game. And I hope they end up delivering, at least with this songbook system.
Yeah, that sounds unique. That sounds like the coolest thing you've said in the last 20 minutes about this game. So that would make me want to give it a shot. I can't think of another game that has a similar conceit. So cool.
The problem in this demo is that it felt like you had to go so far out of your way to make use of this thing. I feel like it just should be something that is happening constantly. So I don't know. Maybe I'll drop that in the early access forum. Just tell them like, what if this was just an unavoidable aspect of this game? That would be interesting.
Yeah. And you should be sort of gathering and assembling those notes as you kind of go through the routine of, the rest of the balance, the balance of the battle.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, there are some very cool ideas buried in here, and I hope, through the rest of the development, they were able to bring those more to the surface. Because, man, I really want this to be super good. Like Final Fantasy Tactics, one of my favorite games of all time. And I hope they're able to, redeem this project at some point.
Did Matsuno ever go on to make other tactical games that kind of push those same buttons for you?
He did not actually. So one of his things is he says he doesn't like to make the exact same game twice. Mm-hmm. He did make Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, which was sort of like a different storyline in kind of the same format as Final Fantasy Tactics. But generally he likes to mix it up. He did, he worked on Final Fantasy 12 for a while. There was this 3DS game called Crimson Shroud, which I like completely in love with. That was the game where you just roll virtual dice. It's kind of like a tabletop RPG in a way.
Oh, I remember this. This is it was like a little mini downloadable kind of game, right?
Yeah. It's one of the guild games. Or I forgot what number
that came out around the time of the Attack of the Friday Monsters. And
yeah, exactly.
Weapon Shop de Omase.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was really good.
I didn't realize there was one I had not played, but I've certainly not played Crimson Shroud.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I don't know if you would like that, but it was definitely very unique in the same way that all those guild games were just kind of like offbeat and a little weird.
Yeah, but brief. The ones that I played were not 50-hour experiences. So,
oh yeah,
even if it didn't quite work for you, at least it was sort of a short adventure.
Yeah, Crimson Shroud was a little on the longer side, at least in terms of how long those guild games were. But man, that was definitely my favorite out of all of those.
Cool.
But yeah, I think for the longest time, everybody has just been clamoring like, when is he going to make Final Fantasy Tactics 2? And I think the reality is he's just never going to make it. But
he doesn't want to.
Yeah, that's why you get so many cases of like Unsung Story, just trying to make something that is similar to it.
Right. A spiritual successor.
Yeah. So, I wish them all the best. I really hope they are able to, put something out there and people go, oh man, this really is just like a follow-up to Final Fantasy Tactics that Yasumi Matsuno never was going to make. So, I don't know. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Jeez. Wow, what a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
So I've been playing Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Not the original one, but the remake that came out 2 years ago for the Switch.
Right.
And the way that I got here was last week we were talking about remakes, and there was a remake that you had played that you were not thrilled with. And I got to
We're not going to name names here.
And I think I sort of pointed out that, I kind of appreciated that Legend of the Link's Awakening remake kind of stayed in its lane, didn't deviate too significantly from kind of the original product. But, just sort of dragged it into the 21st century and made it look kind of shiny for the Switch.
Very shiny.
Very shiny. Exactly. It's kind of its defining characteristic. And that it occurred to me then that I had never finished that game. That, I don't think I got much out of kind of the first act even. I remember being really frustrated by kind of the lack of guidance and direction in that game and just sort of wandering in circles trying to figure out where the hell am I supposed to go. It's pretty vague in terms of direction.
It's a little vague, yeah.
Yeah.
My closest touch point for this is when you first tried to play this, I decided I would replay the original, like the Game Boy version.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my experience too. I was just like, oh yeah, remember when games just didn't tell you like here's the next place you need to go? Yeah.
Yes. And enemies don't stay dead. So you kill a bunch of pig monsters and walk to the next sort of screen, and then you have to backtrack through the place where the pig monsters were, and they're all back. They're all alive again and waiting to kill you one more time. So that got super frustrating as well. Like if I don't have direction and I have to do a ton of backtracking just to figure out where I'm supposed to go next, then at least sort of keep the enemies dead. So I don't have to, fight the same 3 pig monsters over and over and over again.
Right.
Yeah. So
is it that much of a chore though?
No, they're not hard. I mean, you're pretty weak at the beginning of this thing. I mean, Link, you have, you're sort of 3 hearts. And every time you take a shot from one of the moblins, it's half a heart. So you can't take a lot of those before you're dead. And I don't know. It just seemed like a nuisance more than anything. So, not difficult. It's not, asking a lot of me from a combat perspective. It's just tedious.
It's kind of how I feel about Dark Souls. I'm just like, oh, these guys again?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that was as big of a factor as it sounds of for putting you off from this game, though.
From Link's Awakening, maybe I have I don't know, kind of modern expectations for when you kill an enemy in a video game, they stay dead. If you come back to that room later, they're not miraculously alive. I know that's how video games used to operate, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the remake of Link's Awakening functions in the same way. I mean, in fact, for Breath of the Wild, they created an entire sort of gaming conceit to sort of repopulate the world with enemies so that you didn't go through and kill everybody and find yourself alone. They had the Blood Moon, if you remember correctly, in Breath of the Wild.
That's right.
where periodically the blood moon would rise and all of the enemies would rise from their grave. So that enemy encampment that you cleaned out a few minutes ago would suddenly be populated by bad guys again. So,
maybe this is just where we differ in taste, but I feel like if I went back to an enemy camp in Breath of the Wild like 10 hours later and everybody was still dead, I'd just be like, oh, kind of don't like that. Like, what? I've cleared out every enemy on this map now. What else is there to do?
That'd be fine. I'm okay with that.
Oh, really? You want to get to the point just like, oh, it's just me.
I just want to
be walking around.
Me and the other villagers and the other good people of the world and the other, the guy crying on the bridge that I can chat with and the person who runs the little store and like all of those things. Like, I want to be able to ride my horse across Hyrule relatively unmolested by bad guys. And if that means I have to spend the first 200 hours just cleaning out every enemy camp, then cool. So be it. That's the best. I'm cool with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're definitely have differing opinions there.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't want him coming back every 5 minutes. Like, I turn around and he's already back there chasing me down. That's not fun.
Yeah. There were encounters in Breath of the Wild where I would clean out a camp and just sort of like as I open up the treasure chest that is unlocked upon cleaning out the last bad guy, like the blood moon would rise and the camp that I just cleaned out 30 seconds prior suddenly would be filled with moblins again.
Yeah, that's not cool.
That's annoying. I don't need that. Yeah. So, there's no conceit built into Link's Awakening that it sort of explains it. It's just modeled after an older video game where that's the kind of thing that happened. So, biggest deal breaker, though, for that first experience was me just having to backtrack all over the place and constantly sort of finding myself, I don't know, in a room with a stone I can't move or a hole I can't jump over or an enemy I can't get past because I haven't figured out what sort of the proper order of tools is. That I didn't get the feather first, so I can't jump over the holes to get to the big boss. I didn't find the nightmare key, so I can't get into the room with the bad guys, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think, again, it was just very much kind of that old formula of how a Zelda game was sort of paced that required you to sort of be able to kind of suss out these things from the world in a pretty specific order, lest you find yourself constantly sort of gated off from being able to move forward and continuing to walk around looking for whatever that tool was that would unlock the next thing.
But that's like, if you're not into that, how have you enjoyed any Zelda game at this point? Because that's how all of them work.
I don't know. I think maybe it felt more exaggerated in Link's Awakening for some reason. It felt more... it felt like there was more I couldn't do. I kept I just in those early couple of hours felt like I was sort of gated off from doing a lot of things just because I had not, again, sort of stumbled upon the correct order of collecting those things. And I know that's sort of a Zelda benchmark, and it really wasn't only until Breath of the Wild that you can kind of, go anywhere, do anything.
Right.
But now it never felt so restrictive in some of the other games that I played.
Man, maybe this is just a different approach to it, but like when I would play one of those older games and run up against something that was clearly an obstacle that I needed a tool that I didn't have yet to progress through, I would just be like, oh man, I can't wait to get whatever it is that lets me lift this rock or whatever, or lets me like pound down the signpost.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't remember it feeling more pronounced in Link's Awakening than it did in any of the previous Zelda games. Maybe maybe it changed with the 3D ones. It felt more, I don't know, like the worlds were just larger and less confined. So maybe you're running into that stuff less frequently in the more modern games.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I think it was, particularly in Link's Awakening, was sort of compounded by sort of the lack of direction. The hook here is that Link has been involved in a boating accident, has awakened on the shore of a mysterious place. This doesn't take place in Hyrule. Koholint Island, I believe it's called. And you get a little sort of conversation with the little girl who saves you from the beach at the beginning, and then there's not a lot. You don't really have much sort of after that to figure out kind of where you should be pointing yourself. You stumble into some mysteries, but mystery isn't story. So it's not like I had a sense of even what I should be sort of doing here until I kind of did it once. And then, it became clear that, I have to do this 8 more times. But again, I guess maybe I needed a reminder of how these old Zelda games played. And yeah, I didn't play Link's Awakening long enough to kind of get to that point initially. But I'm happy to say, second time around, attempting to sort of play my way through Link's Awakening, I'm in it now. I'm hooked on it.
Oh, good. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I'm so relieved.
That was a long way to go to sort of say, no, wait, it's good, and I have fun with it now. But yeah, I think I have surpassed the point at which my original save from 2018 was at, and have kind of got my flow going a little bit here. I will concede that I did find an FAQ that sort of pointed out kind of the best way to spend your first couple of hours with Legend of Zelda's Link's Awakening. And it was initially about sort of farming some rupees so that you can kind of get a couple of tools that will make the rest of your progress easier without having to do a ton of backtracking or walking in circles looking for the next thing. And that was super helpful. It really, at some point in that tutorial, it was sort of like, okay, 60% of the game is open to you now, have fun. And that from that point on, I've had a blast. So
wait, what were the tools that you need?
It was the feather that would allow you to jump over holes. And
wait,
it
you
was
just buy that?
No, but there's sort of a progression of things that you kind of have to do that are not sort of adequately explained to you in the game to be able to get to that. There's a bracelet you get that allows you to pick up obstacles that are in your way.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. And my pathway to finding that thing just did not happen in my first experience with the game. And so when I got it in the second time playing the game, I was like, what the hell? This has been here all along.
I was wearing it the whole time.
Exactly. And then the bow and arrow, which makes obviously your life a lot easier.
Okay, yeah.
And that you just buy, but it's very expensive. So you have to, collect enough rupees to be able to get it from the shop.
I vaguely remember seeing that in the shop, and I was like, that's too expensive. They're going to just give me that at some point. It just felt like in previous Zelda games, there would sometimes be an item that was just way overpriced. And you're just like, you're not supposed to buy that. But I guess you just buy it in this one.
Yeah. I don't know if one is sort of gifted to you later at some point, but again, this sort of tutorial on GameFAQs that I was working my way through, and I will put a link to it in the show notes if anybody else is 2 years later on still trying to struggle their way through the early hours of Link's Awakening. But it's a really good guide and really useful, and obviously sort of had a huge impact on my ability to enjoy my time with Link's Awakening.
Shout out to GameFAQs.
Yeah.
Wait, was this a guide for the new version, or was it an old guide that still worked with the
written specifically for the new version?
Oh, okay. Oh man, I thought it would have been so cool if you were just like, oh, it's still good. It's a guide from like 1993 or whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean that would be interesting to sort of see how it sort of stacks up against the new version of the game, but. No, I'm having a good time with it. I mean, it looks gorgeous. Again, I think I said that the first time around, that it's a very cute looking game that definitely has a very sort of unique visual approach. Everything looks like it's made out of very shiny plastic. It's almost as if Amiibo came to life.
I'm just thinking, it's like Amiibo's the game.
Yeah, which is surprising to me that I think about it now that I think about it that has not happened yet. But yeah, no, it's charming. I'm having a really good time with it, and again, I'm sort of in that routine. I'm in the oh man, cool, it's another dungeon, and I get a cool little toy that allows me to do some fun stuff in the dungeon. There's the mini boss battle, and it gives you the access to the nightmare key that gets you to the big boss. And again, it just feels like a very sort of familiar progression of events now that I'm kind of in the cycle of it. Just, man, those first couple of hours did so much to sort of get me to quit this game. I really just sort of felt like it's going to happen again. I'm going to hit that wall where I'm walking in circles and getting my health picked at by annoying moblins and just don't want to do this anymore. So I'm happy I got over that hump and now can sort of settle into, having some Zelda fun.
Oh, good. Well, me too. I was I couldn't believe you bounced off this at first. Again, I think it's just how we how approaches to this game differ. I remember playing the Game Boy one a year ago or whenever this remake came out, and just thinking oh yeah, you actually kind of just have to explore like on your own devices to some degree, because nobody really tells you what to do. But it was like, it felt a little bit like Breath of the Wild, honestly, where it was just aimless at points, and it was more about like, oh, I haven't been over here yet. What is hiding over here for me to discover? Maybe eventually somebody will point me towards like a dungeon or a key treasure or something. But the world in this also just feels more compact than other Zelda games, so it didn't feel just as oppressively time consuming to just go from one end of it to the other. In case you missed a clue or something.
Right. I would agree with that. It is a little backtracky. And
it is a little bit, yeah. But I mean,
fortunately, it's not huge. It's not, the sprawling expanse of the Breath of the Wild version of Hyrule.
Yeah.
So you ride your horse for 40 minutes to get to the other end and realize you missed a thing. So yeah, it's I'm grateful for that. And again, it has a lot of charm. I remember playing A Link Between, what's the newer one? A Link Between Worlds, right? Is the newer one?
Yeah.
On the 3DS, and really enjoying that, and sort of appreciating again sort of just how sort of compact and concise of a version of Hyrule it felt like in that game.
Mm-hmm. Man, you would not have liked the original one where you just have to figure out where all the dungeons are hidden. You're just like, there's not even a door on this one.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not saying I want all video games to be sort of a friction-free experience, but I don't know. I have a limited amount of gaming hours in a week. I don't want to sort of beat my head against a wall just to figure out how to get through the front door of this thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I totally see that. I think those games are from a completely different era. Like when the original one came out, a lot of it was just like, oh man, so much of this game is just like secrets that we have to decipher in order to make any progress, and that was just like something that you didn't get from other games at the time.
Yeah, and you're still so.
Or maybe you just got it from every game. That was just how every game was designed in a way.
just vague. Yeah. Well, and at that point, you're how many years away from being able to sort of Google those things and figure it.
Oh yeah.
Pull up an FAQ on GameFAQs and walk your way through it. So yeah, I don't know. I did not consume games like this at that point in gaming. This being able to sort of wrap my brain around how a Legend of Zelda game would work in 1996 would be probably unimaginable to me. But
I think Link's Awakening was one of the few games that my brother and I actually called the Nintendo Power Hotline over.
Oh, really?
There was this one dungeon where we're just like, we don't understand how this is possible. and like you said, there was no internet and there was no GameFAQs, so who are you going to call?
Yeah. And before anybody sort of writes in, yes, there was internet in 1996, but I certainly did not have it on my phone or in my house. I wasn't going to go down to the library to figure out how to do this, so...
I'm going to stick with there was no GameFAQs. That's going to be my excuse.
Yeah. But no, good times. I'm looking forward to wrapping it up. There are not a lot of sort of modernish Zelda games that I've not seen my way through. So the fact that, I spent money on this thing and bounced off of it after 2 or 3 hours is a bit of a black mark on my my history here. So... the 35th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda this year, and hopefully there is more of that celebration coming from Nintendo. So I was.
What are they gonna do?
I was in the mood. For a little Zelda.
Yeah, nice.
Or no Zelda, I guess. I was in the mood for some Link.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. No Zelda in this one. Man, speaking of 35th anniversary, make sure you get those. Get the Mario 35 collection. Or that's not what it's called, Mario All-Stars, before it goes away. I think at the end of this month.
Yes, I believe you're right. Yep.
Because that is just how Nintendo wants to run things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to believe that they're sort of maintaining that. They're kind of sticking with that commitment to pulling that game out of the eShop at the end of the month. But
yeah. I think I've seen so many people say, like, well, they'll probably just split it up and sell them a la carte once April rolls around. But who knows?
Yeah. The other perspective I've seen on it, and we're detouring a little bit at this point, but it is again, the sort of analogy that I've heard before, that Nintendo is essentially the Disney of gaming. And that sort of one of Disney's big strategy in the era of home video was to do sort of limited time releases of their kind of classic movies. You would have 90 days to buy a copy of Cinderella on VHS. And then, we're going to hold it in the vault. They used to call it the Disney Vault for 2 years. So if you didn't get a copy during that little window, you're screwed for 2 years. You have to buy an expensive one on eBay or whatever. So, I mean, obviously the novelty of that wears off in the era of just, streaming on Disney Plus. But I suspect Nintendo probably has a similar approach where, maybe for the 40th anniversary of Mario, we're going to see a re-release or a new version of this or something. So there is an argument to be made for holding something back and maybe making people hungry for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that from a business standpoint. I just think it's kind of a dick move to just not let people buy your games.
Oh yeah, totally. We know you.
I mean, this is kind of the first time they've done something like this, so we'll see what they end up actually doing with them after April rolls around. But I hope they're not just locking it up until 5 years from now
in the Nintendo Vault.
Oh man, just imagine all the crazy stuff they've got hidden away in there. Mother 3, maybe the only thing, there's just one little red box hanging out in there. Just never have it.
Yeah, I know the Disney Vault probably has a few more skeletons in it than the Nintendo one does. There's a lot of creepy old Disney stuff out there.
That 90% finished Waluigi RPG.
Yeah, that we're all sort of dying for, but
yeah. I mean, Star Fox 2 was in there for a long time. We just finally got that a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah. That came out with that little mini console, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Who knows what other secrets are locked away in there?
Right. All right, man. Well, I guess we should wrap this thing up, huh?
I think that about does it.
Yep. If you need anything else from here at Video Game... I can't riff my way through the closing. I'm just going to read it off the outline. If you need even more Video Game Hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And don't forget, you can always get show notes and links and let us know what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to join us on Discord, which, what have we been talking about on Discord recently? We've been talking about the many hundreds of reasons why I should play Stardew Valley.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing, actually. So apparently you can just join the Discord and be like, why hasn't Randy played this game yet? And then he'll just immediately start playing it.
Well, when, 10 other members of the Discord clubhouse sort of come out of the woodwork and just tell me all of the reasons I need to be playing this game, I feel a little obligated to play the game. So,
I know, I was like, oh, I saw the beginning and end of that conversation. I was like, oh wow, they did it, amazing. So now I'm just hoping, what are other games we can exploit this with? How can I get Randy to join my Final Fantasy raid team?
Well, I think the interesting thing, I guess the smart thing about Stardew Valley is that I kind of wanted to play it anyways.
Yeah, that definitely goes a long way.
Yeah, so it didn't take a lot to get there, although there were a lot of really good reasons sort of presented as to why I should play this game. So look for Stardew Valley coming up soon on Video Game Hangover, because I'm going to play it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What else? Please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube now, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And help us out. Tell your friends about the show.
Yeah. Tell them that there's just some guy on a podcast who will just play any game you put in front of him. I don't know. No, that's not true. But Please tell your friends about the show.
Yep.
We want to give thanks again to Felly Kitty for our intro and outro music this week. Please head on over to fellykitty.bandcamp.com. Check out a few of her albums. Maybe buy one or two. Maybe buy all of them. Who knows? Have a crazy weekend.
That'd be nice to do that. All right, we'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.